Hello, so we are on to Neutral Tones by Thomas Hardy. This poem is a very good comparison, I believe, personally, to me, with Sonnet 29, just purely because of the huge, stark contrast with the ideas of their love and affection towards their partner. In Sonnet 29, you have them truly besotted, fallen in love with this person who they want to commit themselves to. Whereas this, if you just look at the title, you can tell that the relationship is a bit meh. It's just not the same. It's lost its spark. And the poet definitely makes this very clear through his use of language, form and structure. So let's first start with Thomas Hardy, a little bit about him. Okay, so the guy, he was living in a poor rural Dorset family. Now that might be key in your arguments, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. He rejected religion. He was in an unhappy and loveless marriage, so therefore you could argue, and you may want to write this down, is that it might be a dramatic monologue because it's based on his own experiences. So it's unhappy. His relationship was unhappy and loveless, and he believed it was believed that he wrote about a maid called Lisa Nichols, but once again, I don't think that's very key for you to write down in your assessment. I'll go back to the idea of him coming from this poor rural Dorset family and the fact he rejected religion. Now, if you can remember from my previous videos, I said there's a particular group of poets that often reject religion and appreciate the rural type of life instead of the urban, the city life. And if you're thinking it, I hope you're correct, but he was another romantic poet. He was a romantic poet because, number one, he obviously had a fascination with the rural life. He did experience that, so it would make sense as to why he kind of went down that political, or that kind of viewpoint of the romantic poets. Now, he rejected religion. I did mention how that can link to the romantics. I think I mentioned it in When We Two Parted. Now, I was saying how they reject religion, often romantic poets, just because they see that it's more of a setup by those in power in order to oppress pretty much the workers and have them obey the laws of society. I'm sure anybody could give a pretty good argument to prove that as being correct, but these people really took it to heart and therefore rejected religion completely. Now, neutral tones, if you guys know what the adjective neutral means, you can very, very quickly, if you wish to, or even in your main body of your essay, you could start to analyse the title. That's actually my recommendation if you guys ever get stuck, especially in unseen poetry, that the bare minimum that you should try to do is just look at the title, because it often gives away a huge amount about the poem before you even have to read it. So neutral, when something is neutral, it's like putting your car into neutral when it doesn't do anything, or when you know that it's kind of stable but nothing exciting is happening to that car. It's not accelerating, it's not reversing, it's not doing anything, it's just neutral. So the idea of their relationship that this Thomas Hardy has used as a title, he's described this relationship in this poem as being like a neutral tone. For me, if you think about something like greyish, or quite a clinical colour, kind of like this colour actually, maybe even more off-putting and dull colour, that's kind of what is metaphorically symbolising their relationship. Because the colour is neutral, it's not bright, it's not iridescent, it's got nothing exciting about it, it could suggest metaphorically that their relationship is not strong. It doesn't have a strong kind of bright colour to it. And it really sets out kind of the accurate comment on their relationship as we read on. Okay, so we stood by a pond that winter day, and the sun was white as though chidden of God, and a few leaves lay on the starving sod. They had fallen from an ash and were grey. So we stood in a pond that winter day. So immediately we've got the use of pathetic fallacy. Pathetic fallacy. I'll let you make further annotations as I comment. So the pathetic fallacy here could instantly show how their relationship, it's the first thing that bothers him is the fact that it is cold, their relationship. It's unpleasant. It's something which seems to last too long for people's liking. The same way winter's day, it often drags by. The hours drag by when you're really freezing cold and you just want to be in the warmth. So the use of pathetic fallacy here could really connote and connect their relationship. And the sun was white. Once again, white is interesting. The sun wasn't yellow, it wasn't orange, it wasn't anything which had a lot of colour to it. Linking back to that title as well, the idea of this adjective, white, it suggests that adjective. It could symbolise their relationship being quite soulless, lifeless, meaningless, nothing exciting. You hopefully are already making some connections with Sonnet 29 and think about how they're using all these vibrant colours in contrast with the, the leaves wrapping around the tree and all of this type of the visual imagery used in Sonnet 29 in contrast to this. So you could make a little reference on the side if you want to help yourself for your revision notes just before GCSE. As though chidden of God. It's actually, chidden is a completely outmoded use of language for this era. So this would be the Victorian era, if you guys want to note that. Vic era. It means, so this word is actually older than Victorian words. It reflects how he's stuck in the past, maybe. The way that he's used this old language. He can't move on. Whereas I think Sonnet 29, they used archaic language or old language to suggest that their love is actually timeless. So it's more of a positive reason as to why you'd use outdated language. And a few leaves lay on the starving sod, as they've fallen from an ash and were grey. So the idea of God, sod, something about the plosive sound, God, sod, plosive. The plosive sound of God, sod, it has a very monotone sound to it. Monotone meaning kind of boring, God, sod. It just doesn't... It's a one syllable, two one syllable words, making it sound quite dry and just like there's nothing more that's going to continue and make the relationship happy. And a few leaves lay on the starving sod. They'd fallen from an ash and were grey. It could suggest that it could be symbolism, the grey, that it's boring and there's a lack of emotion. Moving on. Your eyes on me were as eyes that rove over tedious riddles of years ago. So it's as though they kind of, he's reflecting on maybe the promises that they made each other when they were happy. Or the conversations that they previously had, and now they're being brought back up again. He's now seeing them as tedious riddles of years ago. He's seeing like all these things that they're talking about now, the things that they've already spoken about it. He's feeling it's repetitive, it's just ongoing. There's nothing new anymore. And he's tired. He's tired of being in this relationship. And some words played between us to and fro, on which lost the more by our love. The way that he also expresses that they're talking to each other, but their words are being played between us. It's like it's a game. It's not something... It's like it's almost a game. It's not something which is taken seriously. It's kind of a bit of a joke in some ways. Maybe don't say it's a bit of a joke in your assessment. Just say there's a almost sarcastic kind of tone to this to suggest that, is anyone taking the reason why we're together seriously, or has anyone reflected on that? So they're just being playful. On which lost the more by our love. So this is also referring to the tedious riddles. He's mentioning these riddles. You can say noun. The noun riddles kind of refers to the idea that their compatibility, so their togetherness, their compatibility isn't easy. Riddles, I don't know if you've ever tried to solve them. I don't think I've ever done successfully. But riddles, they are not easy to solve, and it takes a lot of hard work to understand, or a lot of unpicking to understand them. So the idea of their relationship, having these riddles, could suggest that their compatibility is hard to work out. It's something which he almost suggests that he can't even be bothered to figure out. He's tried so hard maybe, and now he just thinks it's all a bit like useless, seeming as they're still at the same point of being neutral. And he suggests that these arguments or these riddles that they've tried to pick at over the few years, it's played with us to and fro. So the arguments have been played. There's a sense of irony there, the way that he sees these arguments almost as a laughing matter. I don't know if you've ever got yourself into an argument between someone, but you get to that certain point of repeating yourself again and again and again, where you almost find it funny, in a bit of a insane sense. You just kind of have a little giggle, like, is this actually going anywhere, or should we just end it now? So there is a sense of irony, because obviously he's not happy, yet he's saying that they're playing with their arguments back and forth. So maybe he's being quite immature or overly light-hearted about the situation. The smile on your mouth was the deadest thing. So we have the use of opposites here. Smile was dead, to suggest that everything's been destroyed. So the juxtaposition of words suggests that their relationship makes almost no sense. There's smile and dead, because that doesn't make sense, how your smile can be the deadest thing. So the juxtaposition can show how, like this sentence and this use of a metaphor doesn't make much sense, it could also symbolise how their relationship, their togetherness, their compatibility didn't make sense. Alive enough to have strength to die. Once again, you have alive, die. So you have the use of juxtaposition. Okay. Grin of bitterness, swept thereby, like an ominous bird a wing. So ominous is something which isn't good. There's almost the use of a oxymoron here, because you have the idea of something negative with something positive. Birds could connote freedom. Ominous is something kind of creepy and off-putting. So you have this mixture of good and bad, whether or not that may have represented how he saw himself as being the positives and her being the negatives. Or maybe it was just generally because they were trying to make two pieces of puzzle fit together when they don't. Since then, keen lessons that love deceives and rings with wrong have shaped to me your face in the God-cursed sun, and a tree and a pond edged with greyish leaves. So they reference here, once again, I've forgotten, it was in Love's Philosophy. I was saying how he, the narrator, the poet, Lord Byron, he was against religion. He also used God in reference to God, although he is a romantic poet, just like Thomas Hardy is. This guy here, Thomas Hardy, I believe, is using this religious imagery to kind of describe how unhappy he is with this person, relating them to something of religion. So you're facing the God-cursed sun and a tree and a pond edged with greyish leaves. If you notice, I've highlighted the yellows here and here to suggest that there's some form of cyclical structure. So you have what's at the top here is repeated also at the bottom. It's not exactly... it's not precisely like a good example of cyclical structure, because it would usually be the exact repetition of a phrase or words used here and then here. And you'll notice how they have changed. So leaves, grey, but here they go to greyish leaves. So maybe it's to suggest that before he felt like he was stuck in kind of a loop with her, but now he's come to this understanding where maybe something needs to give and something needs to break, the same way that this form of cyclical structure doesn't necessarily follow through as accurately as some other examples in poems. The fact that it's gone from grey, their relationship, to greyish, it shows even like more of a lack of care or willingness to kind of accept their relationship in some ways, or do anything about their poor, crippling relationship. Okay, so we're going to go through just a few other points. So the structure, so the structure, there's three little events that is going on. So the same way that was used in it's one of the poems right at the beginning of the cluster, it will come to me. So these two verses is focused on the past, and then it slowly then comes to the future, to suggest that because the past is taking priority in this poem, maybe it's they felt that they're really, really stuck in the past and always feels that they have to look back at past events and reflect on why their relationship isn't working, but still ultimately their relationship doesn't seem to have a very good ending, or hopeful future at all. The rhyme scheme is A, B, B, A, maybe to symbolically suggest that there's no closure. So the A is there and the A is there, if you notice. So this means that you have the two words here, so God, sod, die, thereby, ago, and fro. So always the middle two lines will always rhyme. That's why it's A, B, B, A. Maybe to show, symbolise their how they're separated, maybe. And then you have certain themes of loss, breakup, betrayal of love, maybe, because he does suggest here, he says, keen lessons that love deceives. Whether he's personally felt deceived or lied by love, because what he thought was going to be the love of his life turned out not to be, or whether it might be because she might have had an away match or done something unfaithful. It's not been made clear. It's quite ambiguous. There is a lot of use of sibilant. So you've got starving, sod, sun, stood. Once again, that's quite a plosive sound because it's kind of one which you might spit at if you use the letter too often in a sentence. The S and use of sibilants there could maybe reflect kind of the angry kind of tone, or unpleasant tone, the same way that their relationship is quite unpleasant. The use of the S sound also slows down the pace of writing. For instance, a few leaves lay on the starving sod. You can't really say that very quickly in order to be clear. So the slow pace that is produced by the use of sibilants could maybe reflect the slow pace of their relationship, how it's very monotone and meh. Yes, and I believe that is all I need to take you guys through. There is the negative words, the adjectives used, and I've highlighted them here. You have chidden, starving, fallen, tedious, and ominous. The use of repetition of negative words, the group of negative words, suggests that there's an overwhelming sense of negativity with this narrator and his relationship. All right, thank you guys, bye.